Do you know what's tough? We just had a really goofy little moment there.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of have to go into a serious conversation.
Do we?
Kind of.
All right.
Because the NCAA is forcing us to. The NCAA should have been very happy with the way I was driving the Tez Walker situation over the last week or so. I've been saying the UNC football and coaching staff, the football team and the coaching staff, needs to kind of start focusing on the task at hand and the new tasks, which is the team on the schedule this week. They need to focus on the football because it's obvious the NCAA isn't budging. And you can let the lawyers deal with it and the administrators deal with it, and you have to trust them to hold the NCAA accountable, but the team needs to move on. And the NCAA should hear that from me and go, thank you, right? Please move on, because it's really bad publicity for us every time the team walks in there with all the shirts saying free Tez. And then they go ahead and make Craig McDonald eligible for Minnesota. Craig McDonald played for Auburn and Iowa State, in games for Auburn and Iowa State before transferring to Minnesota. The NCAA's clearance, which came about earlier today or yesterday.
It was today, I think.
Earlier today. The NCAA's clearance means he can begin playing for Minnesota immediately. What the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing here, NCAA? Are we not letting two-time transfers play, or are we letting two-time transfers play? Now, I will tell you this. Craig McDonald is from Minnesota. This is not a made-up word. He is a graduate of Minnehaha Academy.
Which is right there in the Twin Cities, right by the University of Minnesota.
Minnehaha. Which sounds like an insult you would call Minnesota. Like if Minnesota has the Vikings are bad, you would call them Minnehaha. But it's actually Minnehaha Academy. So he's going home. I want to be clear on this. I believe Craig McDonald should be allowed to play. But I also want to be clear on this. I don't know how Craig McDonald is allowed to play and Tez Walker isn't allowed to play. I don't want the NCAA being the arbiters, the judge and jury on things that the NCAA can't possibly be experts on. Right? I'm fine with them being experts on eligibility of college athletes, right? Are they taking enough classes? Are they passing the right classes? Do they have a certain percentage of their major completed by junior year, right? Like, all of that, fine. That's what you do. You're the NCAA. Scheduling the postseason tournaments for the non-football sports. Go nuts, NCAA. That's what you do. Judging the severity of mental health, judging the severity of the necessity of a player's well-being to move closer to home, I don't know how you could be the expert of that. Right? We don't know the reason that Craig McDonald applied. We don't know what his waiver included. But what I do know is he played at two teams. He played for two teams other than Minnesota, and now he's eligible to play for Minnesota. And he in May was the transfer window. He entered the portal, so it's all very similar timing to Tez Walker. So it's like, did they really read waivers and judge the legitimacy? And if so, what did they find illegitimate about Tez Walker's that is, I don't know, on the scale not transfer worthy?
So we talked about, this is from back in May when he decided to transfer to Minnesota. This is actually what McDonald said. This is according to Gopher Illustrated, began back in May. I decided to commit as it's just a good position for me on and off the field, being back home. We're going to apply for a waiver for me to be eligible this fall, so we're going to just wait and see what the NCAA does. That's about it. I'm looking to bring some physicality and leadership to the nickel room, but it's a huge deal for my family for me to be back in Minnesota. It's finally me being closer to my family. You went on to continue to say, being more accessible to each other is big. I'm like, this sounds pretty similar to Tez Walker.
Honestly, if you just replace the word Minnesota with North Carolina, it's Tez Walker.
Yeah, 100%.
And the reason why we know more details about Tez Walker is because he was denied eligibility, right? And then because he was denied eligibility, he had to publicly come forth with the grandma health situation and the mental health struggles that he had, documented mental health treatment and things and help that he had been seeking at previous institutions and currently here. Like I completely get why someone that is a fan of North Carolina, an administrator of North Carolina, or a friend of Tez Walker would be hung up on it when things like the Craig McDonald situation come across their purview. Like, now you start to feel like you're being singled out.
Yeah.
Now you start to feel like you're being made an example of. And it's actually, in a weird way, it's similar to what you're seeing with the Chiefs. Did you see the report? Jawan Taylor was the guy who was it opening night where he was getting a little bit of a quick start. He was their tackle who was moving like right as the ball was moving, and then the viral clips of him lining up a little bit further into the backfield and moving a little bit early. Well, the Chiefs now believe because that went viral, he's being targeted. So he's being called for more penalties than just about every other tackle. So the report is the Chiefs were ahead by $1 billion this past weekend, that they pulled him early. They eventually pulled the starters, but they pulled him early to put in another tackle with the pure instructions to start early and move back further off the ball than most tackles do, to see if that tackle would get called for the same flags that Jawan Taylor was. Basically, they believe he's being targeted, and they wanted to see if someone else would get called for it if they did the same thing. No flags were thrown on the replacement tackle.
Go figure.
And then, of course, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in the postgame say they feel like Jawan Taylor is being targeted. Craig McDonald in this situation is kind of the tackle they put in to replace Jawan Taylor.
Yeah.
Right? It's UNC going, the other guy that did the same thing isn't being treated the way I'm being treated. You're targeting me. That feels messed up. And I see why you would be hung up on that. And now it's going to be even more difficult for North Carolina to focus on, right, the win, the what's important now as their season moves along, because it's becoming more and more blatantly obvious that Tez Walker should be allowed to play. He should be allowed to play. I've said it from the beginning, but now it's becoming more like every single argument against him playing is being systematically like overturned unintentionally by the NCAA.
Yeah. So
I guess for a couple of days here, break back out the free Tez t-shirts. For a couple of days, get the helmet stickers, right? Do the whole thing just for a couple of days, because the Craig McDonald situation's kind of messed up.